For the last 7 episodes, we've been aiming at one thing: to help you see that the world is controlled by an ancient spirit, a spirit that is bent on influencing the whole of mankind to join in his rebellion against God's authority. And we want you to see how he influences us so that you can vigilantly guard yourself from being overcome by his schemes. Today we look at the huge role that desire plays in our lives and how the enemy seeks to exploit this for his own purposes. Largely speaking, we human beings are driven through life by our desires. We're driven by the desire for success, the desire for security, the desire for acceptance, the desire for love, the desire for relationships. We crave money, sex, food, enjoyable experiences, and many other things. And as we hunger for these things, we move toward them in the hopes that we will obtain them. This steers the course of our lives and moves us in a definite direction. This is critical to understand, because the fact of the matter is the devil does have a definite spiritual direction he wants us to go in and a very real destination he wants us to reach. His goal for our lives is separation from God, both in this life and in eternity. And one of the primary ways he works to accomplish this goal is simply by appealing to what he knows we already want. This is how he ties you into the spiritual system of Babylon. But as we consider the part that desire plays in our lives, we must also understand how our will works hand in hand with our desires. While it is true that a desire for something can influence us, it's our will that actually makes the decision to go get it. This is why, as followers of Christ, we must be very discerning as to what desires we allow to be a force in our lives. Clearly, every godly desire can be fed and followed, but there are also very sinful desires in each of us. So how do we successfully control those? To answer that question, we must begin by taking a brief look at the Greek term for desire in the New Testament. The word is epithumia, which is a derivative of the word thumos. Now this is where it gets interesting, because the basic meaning of thumos is violent movement, and it's often used to describe the passions of people which can erupt in a storm of desire or a fury of rage. Any comprehension of the Greek term epithumia is superficial without this fuller understanding about how quickly desire can turn into a raging storm in the soul of a person. In other words, a person's desires might be fairly restrained in everyday life, but there's always the potential for them to go suddenly completely out of control. We're looking at how our desires interact with the Babylonian system, but it needs to be said that not all desires are wrong. In fact, epithumia can be used in a positive sense, such as when Jesus told his disciples, "Many prophets and righteous men desired to see what you see." Those men of ancient days probably had a burning passion to have a greater sight into the age of the Messiah that they knew was coming. However, in the Bible, epithumia is usually translated with the English word lust, because the biblical writers were very concerned about the need to address the longing and passion people can have for sin. And this issue was dealt with quite often. Paul reminded the Ephesians that they formerly lived in the lusts of the flesh, indulging the desires of the flesh and of the mind. James wrote that when lust has conceived, it gives birth to sin, and when sin is accomplished, it brings forth death. Peter told his readers, "I urge you as aliens and strangers to abstain from fleshly lusts which wage war against the soul." And of course, the Apostle John said, "For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh and the lust of the eyes and the boastful pride of life is not from the Father, but is from the world." These are all examples of the word epithumia in the New Testament. People of the world are driven through life by their various lusts for sinful pleasures. But as believers, we are called to a higher standard of living. Obviously, if the desire we feel inside is directed towards something sinful, then we must turn away from it. To even meditate on it is dangerous because of its potential to explode into sinful behavior. And this is exactly what the enemy exploits in their dealings with people. They understand that if they can keep introducing a sinful idea into a person's mind, that there's a good chance that that idea will build enough momentum that it will eventually seem irresistible. At that point, making the decision to cross the line into actual sin is not that big of a step. This is why it is so important for a believer to stop the process before it gets to that point. This is where a person's lifestyle plays such a crucial role in the decisions he makes. Living a godly lifestyle will act as a buffer to the irresistible urges to sin. It's not that he cannot sin, it's just less likely that sin will gain any real hold in his life. Such a godly lifestyle can be simplified down to two basic components, one positive and one negative. Maintaining a vibrant devotional life is a must for anyone who wishes to live above the carnal level of life this world offers. A godly person will begin his day connected to the Lord in a very real way. Time spent in the Word will influence his thinking and affect what he desires in life. Time spent in prayer will enable the Holy Spirit to empower him to reject those enticements to sin. All of this takes place long before the temptation even occurs. The second aspect of a godly lifestyle is simply doing one's best to avoid the influences of Babylon. For thousands of years, all a Christian had to do to escape the world's lures was to stay away from the areas of town where vice thrived. In our age, Satan has brought it right into our homes through television and the internet. Establishing a godly standard of life includes the discipline to avoid entertainment that creates a sensuous atmosphere or provokes lustful thinking. Desire is a part of human life. We cannot help the fact that we must live our lives in the Babylonian system, but we can make decisions that would determine the lifestyle we choose for ourselves. And when it comes right down to it, it really amounts to what we desire for our lives. Do we want to be a part of God's kingdom or Satan's kingdom?
If you don't resist sin at the level of your desire, then you're going to keep going down a pathway.
Yes.
Right? It's not enough to say, well, I'm going to fight, and all of my fight is going to be external, you know? Like, I got to get a blocker.
Yes.
And I got to get accountability, and I got to let people know, you know, give people access to my credit cards. Like, where that's going to be your protection, you've got to go way deeper and start looking at your desire and looking at the lust, and you got to fight it right at that level. Like, you can't entertain those desires for long.